Hey friends. So this morning I had something kind of interesting come through. I was kind of just reflecting on my as I did my morning meditation yoga practice. Just kind of an easy, funky Sunday morning. And as I was saying, something showed up today. You know, I've spoken several times over the last several months about the lunar cycle, something that I never really paid all that much attention to until Sadhguru pointed it out to me. Not to me personally. I saw a video where he talked about it. And he spoke about how the lunar cycle, the full moon and the new moon, are sort of these pivot points, and they're portions of the monthly cycle, the lunar cycle, that enhance our underlying state. So whatever our baseline state is, that gets amplified. It's like it raises not necessarily the vibration of our state, but the intensity of whatever the vibration is that we're vibrating at. And once I started paying attention to that, it got really hard not to notice it. It was like full moons would roll around and I would go, whoa, what's this I'm feeling? And I had to kind of reckon, I've spoken about it on here, I had to kind of reckon with my own, with what that meant. What it means that, like, if I get more anxious or I get more concerned, fearful, whatever the emotions are that are coming up in me, I had to sort of acknowledge, ooh, that's coming up not because there's some random event happening that's causing me to feel this. That's coming up because it's in me, and this is just like kind of putting a lens on it and giving me the ability to see it. So I've kind of been paying attention now for, I forget when the first time was that I did this, but maybe 6-8 months ago. Just kind of been paying attention for the last half a year of lunar cycles. And what I found is the lunar cycle is really connected to our body. That's my perception. The physical body and the emotional body. Experiences that we can attribute to biology, chemistry, those are the ones that really are subject to this lunar cycle. And noticing that is a big deal, because, you know, we all know that the word lunatic is connected to Luna, coming from the moon, and I don't know, you know, I'm not exhaustively briefed on the history of the word lunatic, but it signals to me, and this is also something Sadhguru talked about, it signals to me a kind of an attachment or a sort of subject to the lunar cycle-ness. In other words, we have trouble getting out of the lunar cycle. And that means that there's a kind of like emotional roller coaster that the lunar cycle can take us on. And if we're not sort of prepared to deal with that productively and move through it, then it can almost start to pick up momentum. It can almost start to sort of, all of a sudden we're on the cycle, and it's kind of out of our control, and we're getting, it's almost like we're being pushed along a track, and we feel a little bit like a lunatic. We feel a little bit like, I'm out of control here. And so thinking about this morning, it just kind of was like wafting through my awareness as I was doing my morning yoga routine and feeling some of this in my body. And I realized, you know, I am all about body practices, physical practices, yoga, qigong. I'm a big fan, and I'm a pretty consistent practitioner. And what I've found is that while it's incredibly important to be connected to the body and to be working with the body relatively consistently, it's also pretty important to recognize that we are not the body. And there's an ironic kind of there's an irony in the fact that as we get more connected to our body, as we actually get more in touch with our physical being, we at the same time gain more autonomy from it. So in other words, by doing yoga, by doing some sort of physical practice, we're actually creating space in ourselves. We're creating distance in ourselves from the cycles of the body. Especially if it's a consistent practice, and it gives us a kind of a chunk of work that we're doing physically every day. And the reason why this was showing up this morning, I think, is because, I've been noticing that one of the things that Sadhguru talks about is the length of the cycle you're on. It has an influence on our level of consciousness. So in other words, if we are subject to the lunar cycle with no real separation between our bodies, the rhythms of our bodies and our emotions, and this kind of lunar movement that's going to have an effect, then we have a limited amount of freedom. We have a limited degree of conscious autonomy. We're sort of stuck in this pretty drastic and pretty repetitive cycle. And then, Sadhguru, being the sort of like yogic wizard that he is, talks about all these different lengths of cycles, all the way up to like 12 years. And but the upshot of it is, if we can lengthen the cycle that we're on, if we can lengthen the time scale of our repetitive experiences, and they're going to be inherently repetitive as long as we exist, as long as we want to be in the world, they're going to be repetitive. But as we can lengthen that cycle, then we actually start gaining degrees of freedom. And with degrees of freedom come degrees of joy, blissfulness, a kind of independent, unshakable bliss, a feeling of pure bliss in the nature of the universe, something that's not subject to the lunar cycle, to the ups and downs of either our physical body or our emotions. And I think, what I was noticing this morning is that when I woke up, I was kind of caught. It's a new moon, FYI. And it's gotten to where it's kind of uncanny now. It's eerie that how aware I am of it, and I'm like, oh right, this is the new moon feeling. This is the vibe. Okay. But something in me said, don't be subject to this. Don't make this the whole reality. Don't be a lunatic. Create some space. Create some openness. And as soon as I dropped into meditation, I found a state that was completely beyond any lunar cycle. Nothing to do with my body, nothing to do with my mind, a completely independent dimension of my being that I have access to all the time, but that if I compress down onto the physical, mental, intellectual, emotional scale, it's not that I don't have access anymore, it's just that it becomes cloudy. My connection becomes cloudy, and I start to be more identified with the lunatic cycle. So that's what showed up for me today was, an awareness of these cycles is great, and also that doesn't have to be the end all. They're not determinative of our life. They're just something to be aware of. They don't have ultimate sway over our consciousness. They don't dictate what our day is going to be like, much less our life. They're just influences that, if we're conscious of them, we can exercise even greater autonomy with how they impact us and with how we respond. So that's what I got today, people. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you tomorrow.